now. The Prime Minister will set out plans later to transform the training and skills system, while warning that the government cannot save every job. That's been Rishi Sunak's mantra throughout this. The plan includes offering every adult in England without an A-level or equivalent qualification a fully funded college course. Gillian Keegan is the Minister for Apprenticeships and Skills. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So the offer will be available from April and it applies to courses offering skills valued by employers. Can you define that for us?
Well, it will be defined, but if you consider that before we had coronavirus, we actually were in a position where we had almost full employment in the country, and we had the first month of my job, I was listening to sector after sector, everything from engineering, teaching, policing, science, data, digital, construction, all with massive skills shortages. So it's those areas that we have massive skills shortages. There's a wide range of them, pretty much every sector you can think of, that if you look around, obviously with the exception of some of those that have been very hard hit, such as retail and hospitality. But, a lot of sectors we have a lot of skills shortages in. So what we want is for people to really be able to go on to have great careers in those areas.
And this idea of offering every adult in England who doesn't have an A-level or equivalent, do you know what kind of numbers you're talking about?
Well, whoever, up to whatever age. So over the age of 24, right up to, however long you want to keep going. We all know now that we will be working longer and, taking 2 and 3 careers. And it's an ideal opportunity as well for somebody to make that decision to switch careers or to look to do something that perhaps they always wanted to do but never got the chance.
But how many adults do you think this applies to?
As many adults as want to take it. As many as adults in the country. There are probably only less than half the population that have level 2, who have more than level 2. So it's a large proportion of our adults.
Now, apparently, this is really interesting and it doesn't necessarily reflect badly on you at all. Labour proposed this policy at the last election in December. I'm wondering, is it coronavirus that's made you come round to their way of thinking?
No, I think this has been an often discussed, can we extend, etc. And I think there's 2 things to think about. I think, first of all, it's the skills shortages we have in the country. Secondly, that's obviously been accelerated with coronavirus. But thirdly, we want to make sure that, we had last week an announcement, or the week before, about youth employment, a real focus on youth employment and making sure we support young people. We wanted to make sure that we brought forward something that supported adults as well. We've often talked about the need to retrain. There'll be some technological disruption based on artificial intelligence, robotics, etc., the trend to move online. Some aspects of that have been massively accelerated with coronavirus, particularly the online, and we wanted to make sure that we had the right package to support adults through, their development and career progression, and give them the opportunities that perhaps they didn't have, for the last few years.
Now, the flip side of this, people who go to university, who have A-levels, etc., and go on to university, they're in a bit of a bind right now. As you know, the Times reports this morning that students in areas with high rates of coronavirus could be asked to self-isolate before returning home for Christmas to prevent it spreading, which sounds like not the worst idea. What do you think of the idea of isolating for 2 weeks so that students can actually get home for Christmas?
Well, first thing to say is, these students have been particularly hard hit. There is no doubt, they missed out on their last part of their education. They couldn't sit exams. They missed out on their proms and leaver parties, their festivals, their trips and Freshers' Week. And there is absolutely no doubt, that the coronavirus has had a massive impact on their experience. They're not treated any differently than anybody else in the population. So right now, every single one of us, if we have coronavirus and we have a positive test, we have to self-isolate for 2 weeks. And seemingly also if we've been in contact and, your app will ping or somebody will phone you up and tell you if you've been in contact, you also have to self-isolate for 2 weeks. So that's exactly the same for everybody across the country. And of course, we expect students to go home for Christmas. And of course, we'll make sure that that's facilitated in a sensible way. But, I think it's important to say that, this is a serious situation that we're in with this virus. The rate of cases is doubling every 10 days. And it's really down to all of us to try and use the hands-face space. It's a slogan in a way, but the only thing we know that kills coronavirus is soap and hand sanitizer and keeping far enough away from airborne infections. So, really it's so important that we all follow those rules, and that's what we're urging students to do. That's what we're urging everybody across the country to do. Download the app, follow the guidance, and the more we follow that, the more we'll be able to have restrictions lifted as opposed to more imposed.
Well, I'm just reading in the Times that Gavin Williamson has expected to make a statement and say that students should not face further restrictions. So it would sound as if this idea of isolating so that they can get home for Christmas is going to happen.
Well, Gavin's going to be making a statement later on in the Commons, so clearly we'll have to wait and hear what he says with that. But I think the most important thing is to say we're all following these guidelines. We all have the same restrictions. Everybody has the same things to grapple with. If you're on a business trip and your iPhone pings, you've got to work out. Then you've got to self-isolate where you self-isolate. So these are things that unfortunately we're having to live with as a result of coronavirus. And of course, we're not the only ones. All across the world, this is happening.
Well, you are right that we are having to live with all sorts of things because of coronavirus. But there are some people, including Conservative MPs, who feel that this is a bit of a get-out clause. There are Conservative MPs in the northeast of England who are not happy about this, the new restrictions that are being brought in there, where households can't mix, not even at home, but in pubs or restaurants. There are another group of Conservative MPs led by people like Graham Brady who are unhappy that new offences are being brought in pretty much all the time with no debate and no voting, no consultation. I read this morning about new offences, including falsely reporting that someone must quarantine and pubs playing music too loudly. Should the government be able to just bring in offences willy-nilly without any consultation?
I mean, of course, you can understand the unhappiness and the concern. If you told any of us a year ago how we'd be living today, that we wouldn't believe it. We simply wouldn't believe it. But, that's the impact of the global pandemic. And of course, 6 months ago, we all voted in Parliament to give the government, these powers to be able to act quickly, because obviously it was a public health crisis. It still is a public health crisis. We're going to have we've had lots of debate in the House of Commons. There's I think Matt Hancock's up there every week answering questions. But there will be there was a debate yesterday, and there will be a vote further this week, and there will be more discussion on how to get this balance right. I mean, clearly, what you have to do is make sure you take Parliament with you and they support the measures, because clearly they're representing the public all across the country, but also ensure that the government has the wherewithal to be able to react quickly to these public health matters. And that's at the centre of this. Government doesn't want to be doing this. It's doing this because of the public health pressures that we have as a result of the global pandemic. And I say again, this is a very serious situation. Right now, cases are doubling every 10 days. We need to get the R rate back under 1. That's the only way we can live with it, in a way that we can still socialise in any way, shape or form.
Gillian King, just finally, this isn't outside of your department, but the Times on the front page also talks about a diplomatic rumpus I'd like your thoughts on, which is Prince George's fossil shark tooth. David Attenborough gave him a tooth from Malta. It's believed to be about 23 million years old. But anyway, the Maltese government minister believes this is the property of Malta. It shouldn't be like the Elgin marbles taken by the British for its own use. It belongs to the people of Malta. What would you advise Kensington Palace to do?
I actually don't know what the legal construct is for a shark's tooth, and where was the shark born, and whose shark is it? I don't know, to be honest. But I would advise them probably to have a conversation. But I think I don't know if we've got legislation that covers sharks' teeth and who they belong to or whatever. But I think it's probably one for a conversation.
Gillian Keegan, thank you very much. Minister for Apprenticeships and Skills. It is 7:16.